Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this tutorials. My name is Shadrach. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and keep the notification on. In this part we are going to start working on the UI for our platform. So we are going to start working on the home page, and as you can see here we have the header, we have a hero section with a slider or a carousel, we have this car search engine, and then we also have the map here. Alright. So we are going to start working on the header part. So I'll go back to VS Code, and then I'm going to create a component. The home page is our landing page, and so I am going to have a feature called landing. So there's a folder here, and I'm going to create index.tsx. So instead of tsx I made it ts, so tsx like this. And when I do rafc, it is going to help me generate the React snippet. I'm going to change the name to landing. Landing page. Alright, so this is where we are going to put all the components we have relating to our landing page. Right. So all the landing page features are going to go in this folder. Now if I open up, this is our home page, page.tsx, and as you can see we just have this hello Next.js 14 and then a button. That is what is showing here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to replace that with London, and I'm going to import that from features, and this is going to make sure that after it refreshes we have the landing page text showing here. Alright, so when you look at the header, you see the header is going to appear on all pages. Alright, so we are not going to put the header in the landing page or on the home page, just the home page. It is going to appear on all the pages, right? So the best place to put the header is inside layout. So in layout, this is where we have our children, which is going to render all our pages. So inside maintain provider context, we can put the header on top of all our children. So I'm going to create it. It is going to be called Navbar. So I need to create that, and I'm going to create it as a component because it is not specific to a particular feature. So I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it Navbar, and inside it I'm going to create index.tsx. I'm going to generate, and this is going to be Navbar. So once I save it and I make sure the import works from components Navbar, I should be able to see on the page Navbar and then landing, as you can see here. Cool. So we're going to focus on working on the on our Navbar, which is our header. Alright, so we have 3 sections from the finished up. We have the title, which is going to be our logo. We have this section which contains the alt buttons, that's the login and sign up, and then we have the theme switcher section as well. Right. So that's the first thing I'm going to have here in our navbar. So there's going to be 3 sections. So normally I'm going to have maybe a div like this, which is going to be logo. This is going to be let's say alt buttons, and then there's going to be another one which is going to be the theme switcher. Yeah, theme switcher, that's what I want to do. Alright, so these are going to be the 3 sections on our header or on our navbar. Right, so we want to be able to group that horizontally, so we're going to start using maintain component. Now when you look at the Maintain documentation, the component I'm going to use to do that is called group. Right. So as you can see, group is a horizontal flex container. So it is another type of flex container that groups items horizontally. Right. So I'm going to change this to group like this, and if I save it, it is imported from Maintain core. And if I save it, we are going to start seeing that this is already laid out horizontally, as you can see. And because this is a flex container, we can do align items or justify. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do justify, and I'm going to do space, or even if I do this, it's going to suggest. Alright, so I can do space between, and if I refresh and check, as you can see, exactly what we want. Right. To style this a little bit, I'm going to wrap everything in a container called a box. So box is more like the base component in Maintain. So I see the box component as a div component generally, and you can style it. So you can use the box as a container, as a base container for all your other components in Maintain. Alright, so I'm going to put everything in a box, and I'm going to style the box instead. Right, so I'm going to give it a class, and that is going to come from a CSS module. Right, so I'm going to say import. First of all, let me create that here so that I can import it. I'm going to create a file, and it's going to be called style.module.css, and I'm going to add some styling here. So here I can say import classes, or I can even say styles from styles.module.css. and when you're using CSS modules, you do classes dot the name of the class, right? So the class name, I'm going to call it header. I could call it Navbar and anything like that, but I'm going to call it header, which means that in our styles I'm going to have a class called header, and then I'm going to add some styling here. Right. So first of all, I need to give it a height, and the height, I want the height to be 60 pixels, but I want the rem equivalent for 60 pixels. Right, so that's where I can start using the utility functions coming from there's post CSS Maintain presets that we installed, right? That gives us this rem function, and I can now pass my 60 pixels, knowing that this at the end of the day is going to be converted to rem. Alright, so I need to give it a padding as well. So I'm going to give it a padding left and then padding right. And before I add the values, what I want to show you is that now here I can add the props or the styles here. Right, I can do something like p, which is padding, and I can do p is equal to, right, and then it gives me this Maintain values, spacing values. And so if I choose something like LG and I save this and go here, I see that there is a padding around the container, as you can see. Right, now I don't want to be adding the styles, all the styles here, because it's going to make this component very large, and I'm going to have a lot of props on my component. That's why I am using the CSS module to be able to put the styles in a separate file. So if I have just a few styles like this one, I can put them here, but then if I have a lot of styles, just like I'm going to have for the header, I'm going to put it in a separate CSS file. Alright. And Maintain makes it very easy to reuse some of these built-in spacing. Alright, and I'm going to show you from the documentation here. And so if I go to styles and I go to CSS variables, so as you can see here, there are a lot of CSS variables. So this is for typography, and if I go to spacing, I see that I can use some of these variables, right? So I do Maintain spacing SM, Maintain spacing MD, So these are all variables defined by Mantine already that we can use in our CSS. So instead of doing the MD for the P on the box itself, we can use the variable in our CSS. So I can copy this, and then inside my CSS I can do var like this, and then put that here, and this is going to be equivalent to doing the P MD like this. Right, you get a point. Right, so this is very useful so that we can put our styles here and still make use of the predefined spacing that Mantine actually gives us. Right, so I'm going to do the same thing for pattern right as well, and then if I go here, you'd see that there is a pattern on the left and then the right, but then not the top and the bottom. If I try to show you, if I say BG, no, not here. If I say BG and I give it a color, just choose any color, for example this, you'd see that there is a pattern for the inner container on the left and then the right. So to make sure that I have the spacing on top of the top and down, I can add height and say 100%. That's because I have a height of 60 pixels set here, so 100% is going to make it fit the height. So if I check, as you can see, so if I remove the BG, it's gonna look okay. Alright, so that's how we're going to do it. So here I'm going to add more styles to this because it is our header. I want the position to be to stick to the top, so I'm going to say position sticky like this. I'm going to do top, so top, I'm going to give it a -2 pixels, and then I will give it a Z index so that it stays on top. I just add 10, and I'm going to give it a background color because at the moment it doesn't have a background color. Right, so background, let me just say BG background color, and let me keep it white, at least for now. We will make it adapt to our light and dark theme when we implement that, but for now I am going to say FB, which is going to be light gray, very light gray, as you can see here. So we are going to start working on the logo. So let me create that as a component in a navbar. So new file called logo.tsx, and I'm going to say rafc, generate that, and our logo is going to be very simple. If I show you the finished up, even though it's a text, but then it is a link, you can click on it. So if I am on a different page, I can click on it to take me back to the home page. Right. So I am going to make it a link. What I'm going to use is a concept in Mantine called, so there's a concept in Mantine called polymorphic components. So polymorphic component is basically when you want to turn one component into a different component. And why would you do that if you can just have that as its own component? Alright, so for example, I want to use a button component for Mantine, but then I want to turn it to an anchor or maybe a link element. Alright, and the reason I would want something like that is I want to be able to apply Mantine styles to that component, but then I want to have it as a link. Now this is going to be a text, and this text is a component coming from Mantine, but I want this to be a link, right, a next link. So instead of doing this and then import from next, for example, which means I won't be able to style this using the Mantine styles, I have to maybe add a custom CSS I would rather use a text like this, and then I would say component, and the component is rather going to be a link like this, right? So at the end of the day, this is going to be a link, but then I would be able to apply some maintain styles to it. For example, I can do FZ, which is the font size, and then when I do this, it's going to give me the maintain kind of font sizes. Alright, so I am going to choose LG, and I can also do the font weight to be bold. I want the variant to be gradient. You see that our text is a gradient text. But if I was using the link, I wouldn't be able to have this variant prop available to me. And because I have the variant as a gradient, I now have to specify my gradient color. So I am going to do something like gradient, and in maintain, if you want to specify a gradient, you can do something like from, and then the from color is going to be pink, and then 2 is going to be yellow. Alright, now this is complaining because it says property href is missing in type, and the reason is because I added this component link, right? So you see that it will stop complaining if I remove this. Now this knows that this is now a link element, a next link, and every next link requires the href property, which is basically saying that it should point to a particular route. In this case, it is going to point to the home page, so I'll just do slash, and that makes the error go away. Now if I save this and go back, I won't see anything yet because I've not actually used that in place of the logo placeholder. So I'll go back to index.tsx, and instead of this, I am going to say logo, and then I'm going to import it. And when I save it and go back, after it refreshes, I should be able to see my logo appearing here, and there you go. Very, very nice. Alright, so I'm going to change the text. So let's go back to logo, and I am going to say cargo rentals, like this. So when I save it and go back here, there you go. Very nice logo indeed. And when I hover over it, as you can see from down here, it's pointing to localhost 3000, which is the home page. That's how we're going to be doing it. So with the gradient, it's saying that we want the first color to be pink and then the second color to be yellow. You can specify another property here called degree. So if you want to change the direction of your gradient, you can set a degree to maybe 90. Alright, so it's going to change the direction. But in this case, I want the default direction, so I'll not add the extra degree property. Alright, so this is how our logo is going to be like. So wherever we want to use the logo, we can just use this component. So this is all we are going to have in this component, and because the component is very small, there's no need to put these styles in a separate CSS file, because this is everything we are going to have in this file. Right? So it makes sense to leave them here. So I'm going to close the logo, and I am going to work on the alt buttons next. Okay, so with that, I am going to create another component called alt buttons. So I'm going to create the component here, file called alt buttons.tsx. That's because it is also a component of the navbar. So I'm going to do refc, generate that, and then I'm going to save it. So I'll come here and then just replace it already. I'm going to use alt buttons coming from here. Sorry about some background noise, just doing some electrical work around here. So I'm going to use the alt buttons, and when I save it and go back to the UI, yeah, I still see this alt buttons text here. So as you can see, I have the login and the sign up button. All right, and the sign up is having the same gradient background as my text, and as you can see, I am reusing the same kind of gradient here as well, and even a touch of that on this page. All right, and this kind of gradient is going to be my primary kind of gradient. I will be using it a lot. So if I go back here, I will close some of these files that I don't need for now. Let's close this, and then here inside the logo I have that kind of gradient here, so I'm going to cut this from here. Alright, and I'll go to constant. I'm going to create index.ts. This time it's going to be a tx file because I'm just going to be exporting some constant. So I'm going to say constant primary gradient, and this is going to be a type of mountain gradient, and then that's gonna be this. So I need to export this so that I can actually import it here. Alright, so I'm gonna say primary gradient, and that should still be the same, and I can reuse that in other places as well. Alright, so let me close the logo as well, close this file for now, and then if I go to alt button, I am going to create my two buttons. Alright, so because they are side by side, I'm going to still use group mountain, and then inside here I'm going to have button. Alright, so I need to import this for mountain as well. This is going to say login, and I would have another one which says sign up. Okay, so let's look at our page. As you can see, with the default colors. So the first one, I'm going to have a variant default. So when I do that, yeah, it's going to change it to this. Alright, this white background or a transparent background. But this one, the variant is going to be gradient, as you saw. If I save it, as you can see, it has the default gradient, but I want to specify my own gradient, so I'm not going to say gradient, and I'm going to use the same primary gradient. And when I save it, as you can see, yeah, very similar to what we have. Now eventually I am going to make these links to take me to the login page and then the sign up page respectively. So we're going to use the same idea, even though we don't have those pages created yet, but we are going to say component, and these are going to be links. So next link with uppercase L, and it's going to be the same for this as well, which means that I need to provide the href. So I like to move this as first pop. Alright, so here I'm gonna add the href, and they are going to be pointing to slash login and sign up. Okay, cool. If I save it and I come here, I want to check that everything is okay in the console, there are no errors. Alright, I refresh it. Yeah, there are no errors. And if I hover over it, see it's a link down here. Alright, so log in and then sign up. This component is also done, so I can close that. Now, the next component to work on is the theme switcher component. New file, I'm going to call it theme switcher.tsx rfc. Let's save it, and then let's replace this theme switcher. So when I save and go here, theme switcher. Now, from the finished app, as you can see, this theme switcher uses more like a switcher. This is basically called segmented control. So I go to mountain and we search for something called segmented control. As you can see, segmented control, that's what I mean. Yeah, this is what we are going to be using. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm gonna come here, theme switcher, and I'm going to replace everything here like that, and I'm going to import, and we have just two values, that is light and then dark, with some icons as well. So for now I'll just do light and then dark, and I'm going to remove this. So when I save and I go back to our UI, as you can see, we have light and dark. Nice. Now how do we add the icons to it? So instead of passing these as string values, we can pass an object as values, right? And then for the object we would have a value and then a label. So the value is going to be, first one is going to be light, and then we want to say the label is going to be we can say light as well. And then we can do the same thing for dark. So this is dark and then dark. With this there's not going to be any change, we're still going to see the same thing, even though we have some errors in the console. It says encountered two children with the same key light, two children with the same key. Okay, maybe this was earlier when we copied, but if we save it, let's refresh again and see. Right, there is no error, so it was earlier because these values are different, light and dark. Right, now when I hover over this, you'd see that the label accepts a React node. Alright, so not a string per se, but you can pass a React node as well. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pass a React node, which is going to be another component. Right. And this time I'm going to use a component called center from mountain, and inside center I'm going to have icon and then the text, that's the label. So here I'm going to say icon sun, like this. I'm going to import this from Tabla icons, so import icon sun from, you can say that's Tabla icons React. Okay, so that's resolved. Now I want to say the size should be 1 rem. And I can give it a stroke as well. So there is a property called stroke, and I can say 1.5. So when I save it, let's visit it so that you see. So as you can see, the stroke makes it a bit visible. So we see the sun icon here, and then we want to add a label which is going to be a text, and this is going to say light. Alright, and with that I'm going to do margin left, but let me import the text before, and then I'm going to do a margin left of this is small. Yeah, I think the small is quite big if you compare with this one. It looks okay. That looks okay, but I can even do extra small just to see how it looks like. Okay, I think that's it. We'll go with extra small. Right, and I am going to do the same thing for this as well. So and then this is going to be dark. Cool. And when I save it, as you can see, light and dark. I think we need to change the icon for dark because that is going to be moon. Alright, and I get an impulse now. So if I save it, yeah, so light and then dark. Alright, so that is going to be our theme switcher component, and it looks very cool. Alright, so exactly the same as what we have here. Now I want to show you how easy it is to implement light and dark theme in Mantine. So whilst we are in this component, I am going to actually set it up here so that you see how easy it is. You don't need any extra setup to be able to implement the light and dark theme. So let's give it a try. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a hook called use Mantine color scheme. So it's called use Mantine color scheme, like this, and that is imported from Mantine core. It's not from Mantine hooks, part of Mantine core. Alright, so this hook actually gives us some values that we can use. So I'm going to do constant, and then first of all I have the color scheme, that is the current color scheme value, and I also have a function I can use to set the color scheme. Alright, and before I forget, because I am using a hook here, I have to make sure I am marking this component as a client component. So I have to say use client here before I run into any errors. Yep, so on the segmented control I have the value and then an unchanged event, just like a regular input element. So the value is going to be the color scheme, which is basically going to be either light or dark, and then we are also going to have unchanged, so unchanged, and then we would say set color scheme, like this. Right, and now we have the color scheme value, which is Mantine color scheme. Right, so what I'm going to do to fix this is now when you check the Mantine color scheme, it is either light, dark, or auto. Auto means you should pick the system color, the system's default color scheme. And here I have just the light and then the dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say you should just pass the value to this function. So the value is going to come from here, and as you can see, it is a string. So I'm just going to say value any, just to be able to make this pick the value that I am going to choose here. Now when I save this and I go back here, okay, so alright, the errors are gone. Let me expand this a little bit, and when I choose dark, you notice just like that it switches, and as you can see our pattern also adapts to the theme. Right, if I go back to light, it works very well and straightforward. I mean, there is no extra setup. You see our text is also light. Right, so what it does is, if I go to elements, as you can see, because we already have the color scheme script, we get this on the HTML. Right, so it sets the color scheme to dark. So it is very straightforward. You don't need any extra setup to get this working. However, as you can see here, our header is still white, or I mean light. That's because we specifically said that the background color should be that color. So if I show you that, inside style the module, as we said, this is the background color and it's this light. So how can we make the background color change when we change the theme? Alright, so we're going to use another post-CSS utility preset from Mountain, one of the functions from the preset, and that is called light dash dark, which is a function, and the function accepts two arguments. Right, so the two arguments are the two colors you want to switch. Alright, so I did FB for when it is light, and when it is dark, what do we want to set a color to? Let's say 000 to black. I mean, let's just see how it looks like with this. So as you can see, when it refreshes, the background is now changed to black because we are in dark mode, and when I switch to light, it changes back to light. Very cool. Right, so just by using this light dark, we are able to, in our CSS, be able to let our background color adapt with our theme. Right, so there's no need to do a check inside our components. So normally the way we would have done this is, we will go to index here, and then here we are going to also use Mountain color scheme, and then when we get a color scheme value, we are going to say if color scheme value is dark, then use this color. If it is light, use this color. We've avoided all of that, and just by using this function, we're able to switch between the two colors for light and dark themes. Very cool. Now I want to use something instead of black. I want to use something a bit lighter for the dark theme. So I'm going to use one of the Mountain colors. Right, so let me demonstrate that to you before. So when you want to use like the different variations of the Mountain colors, you can do something like BG, and then it's going to say maybe dark, right, and then you can do dark dots, let's say 8, and this is going to give you a darker version of this dark. If I do like 1, it's going to give you a lighter version of this color, the dark color. The same with all the colors. I can do gray, I can do something like red, and it's going to give you a lighter version of red. If I do a much higher number, it's going to give you a much darker version of that color. Now, as I said, we also have the CSS variable equivalent for all these, so which means we can use that in our CSS, and as I showed you, we can use var like this for our second argument, and we will do dash Mountain. Alright, so this one was a spacing, but this time it's going to come from color. And then what color do we want? We want the dark, and then the variation is the darker version, so we use 8. So when we save it and we go and check, wait for this to refresh, as you can see we get a darker version of the dark color. Right. Now we have some errors in our console. Let's see. So extra attribute from the server data active. Alright, so this is not an error from our Next.js. It is as a result of an extension. I'm going to clear this. We are going to be seeing this once in a while, but yeah, that's not relating to anything we are doing wrong. Just to prove to you that the error is not coming from our app, I'm going to open an incognito browser, and I'm going to open localhost 3000, and I'm going to open the console, and as you can see there is no error here because incognito window don't have any extensions, right? Yeah, so when you see those errors, it doesn't actually come from your app. It's just your browser, some extensions in your browser. So you can look for the extension which is causing that and disable it. Alright, so our light and dark theme is working out of the box, right? It's so easy to implement light and dark theme in Mantine. So yeah, we don't need any extra setup. Alright, so let me close this, which means our theme switcher is basically done. If we check what is here, yeah, so we have everything working for our theme switcher. We can switch light and then dark, and our components are also changing accordingly. Alright, so next we are going to make our header responsive, and I'm excited about this because it is so easy to do that with Mantine. Right? So let me show you from the finished app. Right? So here, as you can see, up until here everything still looks the same, but when we get to a certain point, as you can see, we have a hamburger icon here, and then we have the theme switcher in the middle. The logo is still here, and when we click on the hamburger icon, we see a title here. It shows a drawer, and here we have the login and then a sign up buttons showing here. Right, so the login and sign up button moved from here to here, and then when we go even further, like when we get to a point like this, our theme switcher is also gone, and when we click here, it appears down here, right? And it still works the same way. So let's actually see how we can do that. So what we are going to do is, first of all, I'm going to wrap our alt buttons in a box, just to show you what I want to do. There is a property called visible from. Alright, so with this one, when I say visible from MD, let's see what is going to happen. This is still here because it means the page is still bigger than the visible from value that Mantine sets. That is the medium value that Mantine sets. Now if we go all the way to a particular point, as you can see, it disappears. Alright, so when you say visible from MD, it means that when you reach a break point with a MD size, that's where this should be visible. Alright, so it makes it very easy to make our page responsive by hiding and showing some parts that we want and we don't want. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing for the theme switcher as well. So I'm going to put a box here and then put this one inside, and I'm also going to say visible from, which is going to be SM. Alright, so after this one we go even further, then this is going to hide. Alright, so we save it, and then they are all there. When we go further, it goes away. When we go even further, the theme switcher also goes away. You get it? Okay, so when they go away, it means we should put the hamburger here, which is going to open the drawer so that we can see them on the drawer. So with that, I am going to create a component for the drawer, and that is going to be, I'm going to call it navigation mobile, because it's more like that is what it's going to show, the navigation that's going to show when we are in a mobile kind of view. So new file, navigation mobile.tsx. I'm going to do this refc, and here I'm going to use a drawer here, because the navigation is going to be a drawer, in a drawer. So if I go to Mountain and I search for drawer, so this is a drawer. If I click on it, as you can see, by default it opens from the left side. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'll come here and then come and replace it with this, and then I have to make sure I import everything, add or missing imports, and I have to add the hook as well, right? And I have to make sure this is a use client component, because I'm using a hook use client. And then let's import it from Mountain hooks. We've already installed that. So when I save this and we go back to our page, we've not actually used it yet, but when we come here, we are going to be able to use the navigation mobile here. Alright, so when we do that and we go back here, we should see a button appear here, which says open drawer, and when I click on it, it opens the drawer, right? What you notice though is that it's still going to be there when we expand it. That's because we are not doing the visible from, or when it should be visible, and when it should hide. So we are going to do that. I can wrap another box around this. I'm going to put another box, and here I can do another visible from, and then I can say extra small or small, but this time, because I want it to show only when we are on a smaller screen, if I do visible from SM, it means on small devices coming, it's going to show. So there is another property called hidden from. So this is basically going to do an opposite of visible from. So now when I specify let's say MD here, it means that this is going to hide when you hit a breakpoint of MD and above. Alright, so at this point it is going to show, but then when we go, this is still showing, because we still want it to show, so that we would be able to see the drawer for the alt buttons. But when we get to a point where the alt buttons are supposed to come back, that is MD, that's where that also gets hidden. So as you can see, hidden from MD, and here visible from MD. So very simple. So we do this, it goes away, that shows, and then we can actually open the drawer with that. And that's going to be there from then on. When you go to navigation mobile, it means that we are going to put the alt buttons and then the themes, which are also here, right? That's why we created them as a component, so that we can reuse them. So here I can say alt buttons. So when it shows, I click here. After it refreshes, I see my alt buttons. Now on this page, it is okay for it to be small like this, but on the drawer, I want it to like expand, like fill the whole width of the drawer. Right, so depending on the width of the drawer we set, I want it to expand and fit. Now first of all, I want to reduce the size of the drawer, so I'm going to say size going to be extra small. Want it to be very small. Say title is equal to title, and there is also one property that I need to add. Alright, so transition props. Now I am adding this because I don't want to forget, and the reason is if you don't add this, you are going to get an error in production. At least that is what I had, and when I did a search, it was because of this prop. So you need to specify the transition props and pass at least one property so that you don't get that error in prod. You won't see it when you're running it locally, but then when you host your application in production, you're going to see a client-side exception being thrown. When you add these props and then you add this key and value, it is going to solve it. So take note of that. So I'm going to say slide right, which is the default one, and as you can see, it goes away. Now if I do this, you'd see it gives me all the animations they have here, right? So this is the one I chose. So when I save it, it's still going to give me the default behavior, but as you can see, this time the drawer has become a bit smaller. And as I said, I want to be able to expand this for it to fill the entire width of the modal. So how can we do that? Now before that, let me fix the title here. So as you can see, if I hover over this, the title is not just a string, it's a React node. So it means I can use my logo here as well. It should be JavaScript React node. So logo, import that. Like this. So let's go back, open the drawer. Yeah, we have our logo showing here, which is nice. Now let's see how we can make the alt buttons fill the entire width. Alright, so I'll go here, I will control click on this and then come here, and what I'm going to do is here I can add a property called grow. And if I say grow, it's actually a boolean, so I can leave it like this, which is going to say grow is true. Now if I leave it like this, as you can see, it's going to fix it for our drawer. So if I open the drawer, as you can see, it grows to fill the entire width, but we are going to have an issue here as well. So you see some part of the sign up is cut off. That's because of the grow. So what we want to do is we want to keep it exactly the same way as it is when we are on a large screen, but then when we are on a smaller screen where the drawer appears, that's where we want it to grow. Right. It is easier to do it with Mountain. I'm going to say constant small screen, and I'm going to use the use media query hook from Mountain hooks as well. So use media, it's called use media query, and here you can it's a function. Inside here you can pass the value, so the breakpoint value you want, and my breakpoint value is going to be this max width of 991 pixels. That's the value I saw to work well. If you want to try getting this value, you can also try and then shrink this and see when exactly this button appears, right? So for example, if I go all the way here, as you can see, 9. So look at the value that comes here, right? So all the way to 991, as you can see, 991, that is where it appears, and when it goes more than 991, it disappears, right? So that's the reason why I'm using that value. Yeah, so here I'm going to say that the value is going to be dependent on this, so this is going to be a boolean as well. So use media query, when it hits this breakpoint, this is going to be true. So when I save it and I go back again, and I make it appear and I click on it. I think it's still refreshing, so let me wait for this to finish refreshing. Alright, refreshing is done, so let me click on it now. Alright, so I see an error which is saying use media query is not a function, and think that might be because we don't have a use client app here. So use client, let me save it, and hopefully that fixes it. So let's wait for this to refresh. Refresh is done. Let's try to open this again, and there you go, it works. So as you can see, it grows to fill the entire width, and then when it appears here, it's now not cut off. It appears with a default kind of width. So we've gotten this to work exactly the same way we want. Now I'm going to change this to be the beggar, right? And there is a beggar component for Mantine, so let me search for that. So beggar. So as you can see, I don't have to do the animation because it gives that to me automatically. So I'm gonna say copy this, and when I go to mobile navigation, instead of this button, I'm gonna put the beggar here, and on click I'm going to say open, right? And then open is going to be opened exactly the same way. So import that. Okay, so let me see if I can import from here. Yeah, import. And area label is toggle navigation. That's fine. Let's keep it like that. For accessibility. And when we come here, as you can see, so when we click on it, we get a nice hamburger transition, and this is also showing fine. Now this is here, so there's no need to see it here at this point, but when we go a bit further, it disappears, but it's still not here. We want it to show down here when it disappears from here. So let's do that as well. It means inside mobile navigation we are going to have the theme switcher as well. Here I'm going to put it in a box so that we can hide it when we need and show it when we need. Theme switcher. Yep. And make sure we import, and let's import this as well. And here we are going to say visible from SM. Actually, let's do hidden from, and then we do let's try with SM and see how it looks like. So it appears here. We go all the way. See, we go all the way here. It's not appeared here, so it should still be here. And then when it appears, it's not there anymore, right? So that's what we want to see. Now we want to place it down there. So what we can do is we can use CSS positioning. So I'm going to say position. That's the shorthand value, and say fixed. And then I'm going to say bottom. So bottom is going to be 0, and I'm going to do width and say 90%, and then give it a pattern as well. Alright, so give a pattern around the box. So pattern Y, I'm going to say 8. So when I save it and I go down here, let's go click on it, and as you can see, it shows here. I think we want it to be positioned in the middle, I believe. Yeah. Let's do MX auto and see that doesn't position it in the middle either. Actually, let me do center, right? Just to position this in the center. No, so this is center, as in like this. That's coming from mountain. So save it. Yeah, and that is fixed. So I can remove this from here, and yeah, everything is looking nice. So our team switching is working, and we have the pattern appearing here. We close it, we get our transition animation, right? We have our logo showing here as well. When we expand, we get it. We only see the login sign up, and then when we even go further, it disappears. Very cool. So our navbar is complete. We have it responsive, we have the mobile navigation as well. So yeah, everything is done on the navbar, right? So we're going to focus on our hero section and build that as well. So that means we are going to be working on our landing page. So in features, landing, this is where we have just a landing page text. Alright, so we are going to start creating the hero component for our landing page, and as I said, the hero component is only specific to the landing page, so I'm going to create it here inside the landing folder. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it hero.tsx, and I'm going to do rafc just to generate the boilerplate. And when I save it, let me close these. When I save it and come back to the landing page, so on the landing page, let me just leave it as fragment, and then inside here I'm going to use my hero component here. So hero component is imported from the same folder. Save it, and when I go back to the site, I am going to see hero. In my hero component, when we go, I am first of all going to use a container from Mountain. Import from Mountain. So there is a container component, and I can say fluid. So container fluid is more like it should fill the entire space. I'm going to add some padding. I want some padding down here. So padding bottom, just for the bottom, it's going to be 4m. Should be a string, not this. Right. Now when I save it, now on the hero, this is so there is the slider, which is a carousel from Mountain. So I'm going to use that component, right? But for that, let me create that file here. So slider.tsx, and I'm going to do rafc. So inside the slider, first of all, I'm going to say constant images. So this is going to contain the list of images I'm going to be using. It's going to be a list of images. I think I am using just 2 images, right? So I will use the URL of those images here. As we're going to be using Cloudinary to store all our images, right? So this one, I just added 2 images to Cloudinary so that I can use the URL. So if you don't have Cloudinary account, you can go ahead and create one, log in into your account, and then you can create a folder and then upload your images into those folder. Alright, so as you can see, this is in cargo rentals. That's a folder, and inside cargo rentals I have the top level folder containing these 2 images, and inside that folder I have 2 other folders. One is for avatars and one is for cars. So later we are going to use this folder to store all our avatars. So avatars are basically your profile images, company profile images, and stuff like that. And here we are going to store all the car images we are going to be adding. So if I add a new car, I would have to add the images for those cars, right? So all images about cars we upload are going to be uploaded into this folder. Here it is going to contain like global images we want to use in different parts of the application. So these are the two images I'm going to be using for my slider. So I'll just click here to copy the link, and I'm going to paste it here. That's the first one, and I am going to copy the link for this as well, for the second one. So these are the two images I am going to be using. Alright, so let's go back to Mountain, and we are going to look for carousel. It is under other packages. We go to carousel, and as you can see, we have examples of carousel here. So different options to get you different carousels. I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to come here and then replace this with that. So we have carousel, which I'm going to import, and yeah, that should resolve the import issue. And inside we do carousel.slide, which is basically going to be the slides we are going to have in our carousel, right? So inside our carousel slide, we are going to have our images. I'm going to use the image component from Mountain. So let's use the Mountain one, and with the image I'm going to have src, which is going to come from here, right? So the way I'm going to do this is inside the carousel I'm going to look through the images. It means I'm going to have just one of these. So here I'm going to say images dots map, which I'm going to receive an image. I'm going to render the carousel here instead. Now I need to add a key. I can say image because they are different, and then I can also use image here, and I would say alt because it requires that alt. Yeah, let me leave it empty for now. We're supposed to see our image inside our carousel, but I want to center it, right? So to easily do that, I'll use a center component from Mountain and then put the image in that instead, so that I don't have to write extra styles to center. Now I want to give it a height so that I see it. So a height, let me just say 600. I can do 600 like this. And with Mountain, when you pass a number to a prop, it is going to convert it to rem, right? So this is going to be a rem value. So if I save it, we have to use the slider in our hero. So in our hero, we are going to say slider, import that from here. Okay, so when I save this and I go back here, after it refreshes, let's see what happens. So in the React client manifest, there is probably a bug in React Server Components Bundler. I think, yeah, we might be. So let's go here and then add the use client up here. Just because this is a client component, we are not doing anything server here. Alright, so use client, not client, like this. Let me save it and see if that fixes it. After this refreshes, yeah, as you can see, the error is gone. Next.js 14 doesn't actually give you, most of the time, doesn't give you the use client error we used to see in Next.js 13. It doesn't specifically tell you. It's going to give you a different error altogether. You might think it has to do with something else, but then it would just be about the fact that you are missing a use client in a client component, right? So take note of that. Inside our hero, we have our slider working, and let's click on this to see. You see it changes fine as well. We are setting a height of 200 here, which is actually making it look like this. So we don't want that. We want to remove the height so that it uses this height. So let's remove the 200, and after it refreshes, Cool. So we have our cars showing, and then the indicators are also showing, right? But as you can see, when we reach here, we can't go. We can't go back, and when we reach the last one, it's finished, so we can't actually start again or restart. We can do that with the loop prop. So we can add loop here, and then we can go back, and then we click on this, it goes, click on it again. As you can see, it loops, and then with the back as well. We have our slider working. One thing I need to do though is, because we are setting the height to 600, when we begin to shrink, even though the images become small, but if I show you the background of this, no, it says BG, and I say blue, for example, you'd see that it is all the time 600, 600 pixels, even though it is small. So if I put a content below this one and I don't have the background there, you'd see that there is a lot of space at the top and then the down here, which doesn't actually look good. So what I want to do is I want to make this a bit responsive. When I am decreasing the size, I want the height to reduce, because the image is going to reduce in size. So with mountain, I can do something like this. I can pass another object inside here, and then with that, there are some properties I can pass, which is, for example, base. So on base devices, I want the height to be 300, which means this is going to be the smallest height. And then on medium devices, I want the height to be 400 pixels. And then on large devices, or extra large devices instead, I want the height to be the 600. That is on large screens. So from medium to large devices, this is going to be the height. From base to smaller devices, this is going to be the height. And then from extra large sizes upward, this is going to be the size. Very, very simple. So if I save it, you'll see that the height is going to reduce. As you can see, this looks much better. And if I am increasing like this, it goes a bit more. You see, it increase a bit, and then if I hit extra large, it does increase, and it looks nicer that way. Cool. Yeah, so I think because I'm using the center, it's also centered perfectly. So we are basically done with our carousel. Let's save and then close it. We're going to add this background image and background gradient. I'm going to add a class because I want to style it in the CSS. So I want to add a class name. And let me add a file, style.module.css. I'm going to have it all here. I'm going to add my styles here, right? So let me import that. Import classes from, then I'm going to import from here. So I can do classes.hero. Good. So here I can start adding some CSS styles. So the first one I'm going to add is a background color. So background color, it's going to be the fallback background color, because I'm going to use a background gradient with the image. So for some reason, if a browser doesn't actually support that, then it's going to fall back to this background color. So I'm going to use the RGBA. The values are going to be 253 126 20 and 0.65 65, like this. So that's the alpha. So you can see the color, and I want to do background size, and say cover. because we want the image to cover the entire background. And then I want to do background position center as well. Now background repeats, I'm going to say no repeats. I'm going to also add the background image, right? And that is going to be a linear gradient. And here I am going to add the first part, which is the gradient overlay, and then the image is going to go here, right? So the image is going to be an image URL that I got from Pexels. So I'm going to use the Pexels image URL. There's no need to download that and add that to Cloudinary. I can just use the URL from there. So that's going to be the image URL coming from Pexels. And here I'm going to add my linear gradient overlay. So actually it's not supposed to be here. So this is supposed to be after. It's supposed to be after this. So we have the linear gradient overlay and then the image. So the linear gradient, what colors do I want to use? So this is one of the colors I'm using here. The first one is going to be the pink kind of color. So let me copy that as well. Alright, and here I can add the direction. So the direction is going to be 65 degrees, like this. So when I save it and I go back to here, as you can see, very nice. Alright, so let's go back to hero. Actually it's a slider, and then we're going to remove this BG blue. Right, and then when we come back, as we can see, nice. So let's make it bigger. Yeah, I think the thing I am missing is margin top. Alright, and I added a margin top of 2 rem, and it is because of this. Because I have the header here, the navbar here, right? So that to push this down a bit. So that's cool. Okay, so let me close the slider. Let me close the styles. I'll open it if I need. Close this. Close this. When I come here, we have our hero section done. So we are going to work on our search engine, right? I'm calling it search engine because it's more like the search engine for our car. So we are going to work on this one next. I'm gonna go back to VS Code. After the hero, actually inside the hero, because search engine is on the hero. As you can see, it's on the hero banner. So I'm gonna put it in the hero component instead. So here I am going to add another container here. Right. And this time I am not going to make it fluid. Here I am going to add some padding as well at the bottom. Here I am going to put my search engine. Right. So search engine, which is going to be a component I am going to create. And our search engine is not going to be used only on the landing page. As you saw, when I, for example, let me choose some values. All selected dates. When I click here and we go to the car list page, as you can see, we also use the same search engine here. So it means our search engine is not only going to be used on the home page. So we are going to create it as a component, a reusable component. Alright, so let's come here. I'm going to create another folder called search engine. I'm going to create the file. So normally I like creating index.tsx when I have the folder with the same name as the component. Alright, so I can create index.tsx tsx like this. RAFC. When I create the component, then I'm going to call it search engine like this. Right. If I add another search engine file here, then I would have to import from the folder search engine and then slash search engine. Right, so when you have the index.tsx, you can import directly from this folder. And I'm going to have another file which is going to be the styles. So that one, let me just say search engine dot search engine dot module dot css like this here. So we can actually add a flex component from mountain core. Alright, so we're going to display it flex. We could have used group or anything like that, but the reason why I'm using flex is because I want it to be responsive. So I'm going to change the direction when I am on a smaller device so that it is going to be vertical instead of horizontal. So I mentioned group, but then group is used for just horizontal layouts, right? So I'm going to use flex this time, and then let me just put some placeholders here for now. So this is going to be select country. So the first one is we have select country, and then we also have region. Now we have car make, pickup date, and then return date. Right. We also have the button, so let me add that as well. Right, and then this is going to say search for car. Right. Variant is gradient, and then my gradient color is going to be primary gradient. We have it in a constant already. So when we save this and then we go and check our version, let's see. Alright, nothing is appearing here because again we forgot to import this. So if I save this now and I go back, let's see if we see something after it refreshes. Yeah, so as you can see, we have it lined up here ugly. So here in our search engine, I'm going to give it a class name, right? And that class name is the reason why I created this search engine module.css, because I'm going to style it there. So I'm going to say classes, which I'm going to import very shortly. Classes.container. No, it's lowercase. And then here I'm going to say import classes from, and then that's going to be imported from search engine module.css. And then in here I'm going to say dot container. Let me just copy and paste that here and I'll explain that to you. So I'm going to save this and then save this. So here I'm giving it a border radius and I'm using a rem function again, 6 pixels. I am giving it a border 1 pixel solid and I'm using this color. Now I'm giving it a box shadow, right? And as you can see, I'm still using a mountain variable. It's coming from shadow. Alright, so we have dash dash mountain dash shadow and then sm, so the small shadow, and then I have a background color which is this variable. Right? So there is a variable called mountain color body, which is already going to adapt to the light and dark theme. So when you use this variable, you are going to get a nice version. You're going to get a background color which adapts to light and dark theme automatically. So if I come here and I wait for this to refresh, should I see that? It's already refreshed. Okay, but nothing is showing yet. Let me style this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this class from here. Alright, I'm going to add another inner container like this, so that I can, so more like a wrapper, so I can add this here. And here I'm going to add a gap. Let me just say SM. Now I'm going to say direction, and with this, as I said, we are going to change the direction based on the screen size. Alright, so you can easily do it by doing this. So on smaller devices, we want it to be column. Alright, so column, and on a much larger devices, which is going to start from SM, we want it to be row. Alright, so if I save this, as you can see, there are some gaps here, and if I try to shrink this, as you can see, it appears in column, it goes row. Alright, so with this one, let's see, I have classes.container. Let's see if okay, I think we have a mistake here. That's why the styles are not showing here. So the container was spelled wrongly. So now there you go. I see the background color, and if I change to dark theme, as you can see, it changes automatically, even though we didn't add any lights dark function. We just used this, right? Okay, so now we can actually start creating our components, but before that, let's style the flex a little bit. So here I have the direction. Let me also say justify. So justify content is going to be center, align items, so we can say align. And with this one, because it is going to change direction, I am also going to do it slightly different. Right, so on base I'm going to do the stretch, but on this point, from this point going, then I'm going to do flex end. So when it changes direction, and then I'm going to do the same thing for here. I'm going to increase the size if we are on large device. So for example, I can do base. So base is going to be SM, but then on large devices, for some reason it's just SM. I want it to be large. Right? It's gonna make this work well. Nice. All right, so we get more gap, and then when we get to here, yeah, it is in column, and the gap decreases a bit. Okay, so we have these placeholders. We are going to create them as components, starting from the select country. So let's do that. So with that, I'm going to create the component. So what I am going to do is now I want the selector, the country selector, to be a global component, because I'm not going to use it for just the search engine. I'm also going to use it for other places as well. For example, if a user is filling their information, they are going to select the country they come from. Also, if a provider is maybe creating an account, they are going to select the country they are creating the account from, right? So it means that it's going to be used in different places, not only the search engine. So I'm not going to create it here. I'm going to create it in the top level components folder. Alright, so I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it select country.tsx, and I'm going to say arrayfc. Here I'm going to use mountain select component. So let's look at that. So where is the select component? Select this one. Alright, so here we have a simple select component. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here and make sure I import it from mountain. Alright, so the label, I'm going to call it country. I'm going to add a placeholder. Let me add my country, and I can add some countries: Ghana, USA, Nigeria. Okay, so if I go back to search engine, instead of this placeholder, I can now say select country. Import that. Sorry, no. So when I save this, I go back. I should see my selector here, and there you go. So I have my label and my selector. If I click on it, I see the countries I added. Right. So it is going to be the same thing for select region, select car make, and other things. But yeah, before that, let me add some extra properties before we copy for the other ones. Now we want to say searchable true, because if there are a lot of countries we want you to be able to search. We want to also add another property called nothing found message. So if we are searching and we don't find anything, what should we show? We want to just say nothing found. Okay, so we're going to add more properties a bit later. For now, this is okay. Alright, so let's test it again. So if we try to search Ghana, or if we search a country, we don't find it, it's going to say nothing found. Okay, cool. So let's do the same thing. Actually, let me copy this and paste it, and then rename this to select region. And we can use that here. Select region. Save that, and we should see for this. Perfect. Now we also need it for car make, so we also have some car makes here. So let's copy this, paste it one more time, rename this, and then we're gonna say select car make. So we use that as well. So select car make. Actually, I need to change it from here. Make, can't spell, so that I can import it. So when I save it, we see that here as well. So we're going to work on the dates picker. Right, so above the return and pickup date. So with that, we are going to create another file in our component called select date. So it's going to be one component, and we're going to reuse it. Right, so we call it select date .tsx, So I'm going to open the documentation for that as well. That should be down here. Runtime dates. If you already installed it, we want the date input. So here we can copy. First of all, let's copy the import. Go to our VS Code, and then actually let's copy everything here. Alright, so we've been using our function, so we can just do constant select date, just like this, and we need to make sure we are exporting it, right? And here, because we want to make it generic, we want to pass some few props. So it's the first time we are going to be passing props to our components. Alright, so let's start doing that. So we're going to say interface props, and first of all we want to be able to change the label and in the value as well. Alright, so let's start with the label. Alright, so label is going to be, so as you can see, if I hover over it, it's a React node. So let me copy this, paste it here, then I'm going to import from React. I'm going to receive the props label. So instead of this, I'm going to use the generic label. Right. So with the placeholder, I'm just going to say select date, because they are all going to be dates. We have the value, we have the set value. Let's pass this as props also. So value, and if I hover over it, so all the time if you want to get the type, the actual type, you can just hover over it and then you can check it out. As you can see, it is a date value or undefined. Right, so let me just copy this. Value is date value, and I also want to add my own type or date, like this, so that I'll be able to pass JavaScript dates to it as well. Okay, so I need this onChange as well, right? So it is going to be the same. So when you hover over the onChange, you can see onChange is a function that accepts the value of the date and return a void. So we can copy this and then paste it here. So here I'm going to accept the value, and I'm going to pass the onChange as well. So here onChange, and the value is going to come from here, so I can remove this. Okay, so one more thing I want to pass is that we're going to have something like a main date. Alright, so for example, if I show you the finished app, if I am selecting a pickup date or a return date, I don't want to be able to select a date which is in the past. I want to be able to select a date starting from today onwards. Alright, so that's what we are going to use the main date to do. Alright, so that is one prop that we are also going to pass, called main date. And main date is also going to be a date or date value. Alright, and that is going to be optional as well. So here we can pass main date and say main date. We need to make sure we are passing it here. Alright, so it says main date value undefined is not assignable to type date. Okay, so let's just do date. That's basically it. Let me add width here and just say 100%. We can Now start using our select date. Let me close it for now. So here we are going to say select date, right? And we are going to reuse it. So when we save it and we check hours, we should see dates and then select dates, even though they are no label, which means I am going to remove this as well. Now I'm going to add some labels. So this is going to be pick up date. It's going to be return date. There you go. So as you can see, we have pick up date and then return date. So this is going to be our search engine. So as you can see, right now we're able to pick the previous dates, but right, so I can pick like a previous date. That's what we are going to use the main date to fix. We have the UI in place and everything is working fine. We will come back later to come and implement our search engine to work. For now we have the UI and it looks good. So we are going to next thing add our map here, and as I said, we are going to be using React Leaflet. So I've opened the documentation here, and as you can see, there is an example here. So if I click on get started, the installation steps are here. We've already installed it, and these are some of the components you get. There is a use map hook that we can also use. You can go through the documentation to see how to use this map. We are going to use limited features in our app. So for example, like the setup, I'm going to copy this whole thing, and in my application I'm going to create another component here. Let me actually close some of these, start from a clean state. Let me create a new, actually let me create it as a folder because I would need a CSS file as well. So map, and as usual I'm going to create index.tsx. let me paste this here, not yet, just going to do RAFC to generate, and I'm going to say map, and I can paste it here now. Right, so I can import from React Leaflet. I'm also going to import the marker, right, and then the pop-up as well, like this. And I am going to save this. Now I am going to style this so that we can see. Right, so going to add a style file here. I'm going to call it map.module.css. I'm going to copy and paste the styles and I'll explain to you. Right. So here there is a border radius, overflow hidden, pattern. Want to remove the pattern, add some box shadow around the map using a mountain shadow. Border width 1 pixels, border color giving a gray border color, and then margin bottom 1 rem. So not a lot going on here. So I can say import classes, from our map.module.css, and then on the map container here I can just say class name is going to be classes the map container. Let me check it is the same. Yeah, looks correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because of how I want this to work, I'm going to rather give this class name to a wrapper. I'm going to wrap this in a container, in a mountain container, like this. That's also because I am styling it. I am targeting the mountain container to style, not the map container itself. Right. So here, and I can add a wrapper down here. Okay, so can save this. And instead of map container, let me just say container. And then I am going to do map container for this. Map container. So when I come here, I am coming to, I will change, first of all I'll copy this, I'll change this container. Then I'll add a few styles for the map container as well. Alright, so I'm going to say the height should be 300 pixels, and I want to say width should be 100%. I want to remove the z index. Right, so I think I had an issue with the map appearing on top of some things, so I'm going to set the z index to 0 and then margin to 0. So let's save this. I am going to remove this. My zoom is going to be 14. That's the value I used. And tile layer, fine. Pop up. Yeah. So this is gonna be my region. Right. So it's gonna be region name. Region, not that. So let's save this and see how our map looks like, or even if it's working at all. We're going to be using it on go to features, landing, index, and here after hero you're going to use I'm going to put a container, another container here. I'm using a lot of containers, but that's fine. Right, so import one time, and inside here I'm going to be using map, which is coming from here. Now let's run this and see what we get. But before that, let me give it a margin top of -3 rem, just to make it appear on top of this, right? Pushing it up, as you can see here. Okay, so we also have padding X for 1 rem, and then we want to give it a margin button too. Margin button to rem. So let's see what we get. Okay, that is well, that's positive. At least it's a good start, even though there are some errors in here saying that you can't find a marker icon, or yeah, marker shadow.png, whatever. But at least we have something showing. It looks like it's a huge map. Oh, at least we know that the map is showing. I think that what we need to add is the CSS as well. There's a CSS style that you need to add, right? So I'm going to put that in my global CSS file. So here I'm going to import this, right? So you can find that in the documentation. We need to import this CSS, and when I save it, close this and come here. Let's refresh this again and see what we get. Okay, so we are not seeing anything at all again. Actually, there is an error. It says internal server error. If we go to network and we check here, what's the error about? So we are getting internal server error, that's 500 for localhost, and I believe it's because we added the map, and there's no extra message for the map. Okay, so I think I know what is wrong actually. I think I had this before, and the error was basically because we are importing the map directly like this. So I think the way we need to import the map is using a dynamic import in Next.js. So let me show you how to do that. So up here I am going to say constant map is equal to, and let me comment this out for now. I'm going to use dynamic from next dynamic, and inside it I would pass a callback function like this, right? And then it's going to return an import of this. Right, so import, and then here I am going to pass this. Right, and then after this I need to say server-side rendering is false, SSR is false. That's supposed to be an object. Okay, so when I do this, there is an error which says argument of type promise is not assignable to parameter of type dynamic options. Let me clear this. Yeah, so I think I need to go to my map, and then instead of an export using a named export, I should just do export default map like this. So when I do this, as you can see, the error is gone. Right. So when I save this, hopefully we should be able to see our map. So here, let's see, try and refresh this. I'm gonna go back here and then just say style, and here I'm gonna say height. It's gonna be 300 pixels. So let's use this and see. There you go. So it was taking some time to load. Yeah, right now we have it showing. As you can see, it overlaps with this. I think there is a lot of space in our version. So let's see how we can fix that. If we do like inspect, I think the space is coming from here. It's coming from the search engine. So let's see what we are doing there. So search engine index, and we added what? So for the container, if we check the styles, pattern 1 rem. Okay, so let's check our hero. We have pattern bottom and then where we have the search engine, we also have pattern bottom forum. If we remove one of these, maybe it fixes that. Yeah, I like it this way. I like it this way. Okay, so now as you can see, my map is a bit different. This one is slightly different from the default one I get here. Alright, and that is also in the documentation how to change that. But if I want to fix that, I will come here. Alright, so where it says the tile URL here after openstreetmap.org, I can change this and then use fr here. Alright, and then I can do slash hot like this. So just by changing this side, should get a different map. Yeah, as you can see, so it changes. So looking at this, the UI of our home page is basically done. As you can see, we have our header working fine. We have our search engine. If we try to, yeah, it's responsive. Map is also looking okay. I think the extra space here, but yeah, still looking okay. So the UI for our homepage is basically done, and that is basically how we are going to end this part, right? So we are getting there eventually. We are going to start bringing in some databases, set up some server-side kind of actions, and start getting some real data, right? As you can see, we still have some data to load here instead, and they are going to come from the databases. Alright, so we're going to make this dynamic so that you can add multiple countries and multiple regions associated with that country. And then we still have to add some real car. We still have to add some more car mix here. We need to also fix like the date, and we need to be able to make the search also working. Right. So yeah, that's still a long way to go, but we are going to end this part here. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next part.